Welcome to this episode of Handy Mendy TV, and I'm going to be showing you how to hem your own pants. Because one, nothing says unprofessional and untidy. It's kind of hard to explain, but I mean, if you walk into a business office and you see somebody whose clothes don't fit, it looks very unprofessional and unflattering. So I mean, if you're in a law firm, you don't expect someone to have like really bunched up hems because, you know, you figure tailored, they're going to fit perfectly, and they're supposed to fit perfectly. And the second part is, it's going to save you money if you know how to do it yourself. I mean, I worked at an alterations place for a co-op in high school, and a simple hem would cost $15. So I mean, imagine how many pairs of pants that you have that need to be hemmed, or could use hemming, and then multiply that by $15 minimums. Once they start getting into like blind hems and really fancy hems, like I have a friend, she works at Stitch It, I think it is, and she does like all these fancy hems for different jeans that are very high-end quality, and she can replicate it like no other. Like, she's amazing at sewing, and once you start getting in those high-end stitches for those pants, they're going to cost an arm and a leg. So I mean, if you know how to do it yourself, you're going to save yourself a lot of money, and you're going to show whoever sees you wearing these pants that you're going to look professional, because you want things to fit, and everybody has different sizes. Everyone's, you know, different heights, and when they sell pants in the store, they're not thinking, oh, you know, maybe we should offer the services of hemming the pants. They just, if you're getting it for a bargain, they don't really care. They just leave that up to you. And then it's like, well, that's just great. These pants don't really fit. They fit everywhere else except my hems. So I'm here to teach you how to do it yourself. Alright, so I'm going to show you what you're going to need. So I got my pairs of pants. Well, this is one. I've already pinned the other one. So those are the pants that I bought at Shijishira, or rather my mom got me for my birthday. Thank you, Mama. And I have, let's start off. There are different ways to finish that raw edge that you're going to end up cutting when you shorten it. I have a serger right here, and it can be expensive. So if you don't have somebody that you can use, like has a serger and you can borrow it, there are different ways to do it. If you have a sewing machine, you can use zigzag along the edge, or depending on how that fabric unravels. So if it unravels really easily, I would definitely like do a zigzag or some kind of thread finish. Don't just cut it. But you can use, these are pinking shears, so they do that little zigzag cut on the end. So that's one way of finishing it off. Or if you're like, if you're trying to duplicate the hem, and it turns out to be like a really fancy garment that maybe you got at like a yard sale, or maybe you got in the store at discount or clearance, it may have a Hong Kong hem. And that is to say that there's a separate piece. I'll show you this little sample. This is the fabric, and then on the inside there's this little piece of bias tape along the edge, so that that edge that you just cut, it's got to be finished off so it doesn't unravel, because it's going to be on the inside, rubbing against your leg as you're walking around, and you're putting it on or putting it off, and you know, you don't know if, I don't know if you're using that as your uniform, so I mean, how many times you wear it. There are different kinds of finishes, and Hong Kong is, it shows that it's worth more because of how much work it goes into it. So normally you would take your piece of fabric and you would cut these little strips. They're about 1 inch in width, and you just cut these long strips, but they're at a 45-degree angle, and depending on how slippery your fabric is, it can take a while. So I mean, this is the triangle that we got in our kit. So I mean, you just put that at the corner of your fabric, and you just draw that line, and then you add inches, and depending on how much bias tape you need, because you don't, maybe you're doing like a whole bunch of them at once, so then you cut a whole bunch of strips, and it can be a pain. Or You can use a ruler. This is technically an L square. You can use it with a regular ruler. You just measure one way and measure the other, and then draw the line. So I mean, you would take the same measurement on both sides, so like a 5 or whatever number, and then just connect those, and that's your 45-degree angle. So, but there is a way to cheat. You can go to the fabric store. Around here, we're in Canada, so we have Fabricland, and you can actually go to a certain section, and they have the tape already made up for you, and depending on how much you need it, this one is folded twice. There are some that are just folded in 2, so it saves you the time of having to press these really small pieces by hand. But depending on the quality, like if you're doing it for a designer level and you want to match the quality, these are all polyester, and designer quality is all natural fibers, so like really high expensive silks, or it can be cottons, just anything that's natural, not man-made. So that's how to finish your edges. If you want the instructions on the Hong Kong finish, I will put it below. So this is my little sheet that was with my samples from school. So the different kinds of hems include blind. So I'm going to show you this. So this one, the edge has been cut and it's been serged. And then by hand or machine, because I don't have a blind hammer, I'm going to be doing it by hand. They attach it to the outside, but it's such small stitches that you can't really see it. That's why it's called blind. And then for jeans, you can see the stitching at the end. So when you turn this inside out, it's also been folded twice, not just at the hem, but again at the inside. So there's 2 fold lines. And I'm going to go over how to the rules on how to do it yourself. And then there's Hong Kong, but then there's also ones with lining. This is a skirt from my final collection. It's been Hong Kong hemmed. And then there's a lining, and then there's, that's got its own hem. And then there's these, oh, I forgot what they are. They're like little ropes, tacks. If you've ever made friendship bracelets, they're kind of like that, where you knot it around the thread. So they're attached at the side seams and front sometimes. So there are different kinds. I would highly recommend getting that book, Reader's Digest, The Complete Sewing Guide. I'll put a link below to the Brainchild exhibition where I have all the reading lists, so you can see that, and I'll have a link to amazon.ca or .com, and you'll be able to order it if you want it. Alright, so the other things you need are pins, because you're going to need to know, you're going to need these pins to place where you want your hem to fall. And then you're going to need a measuring tape and a ruler. Now when I say measuring tape, I mean one that isn't a wind-up like this. This is a no-no. Use these. They're really super cheap. You can even get them at the dollar store. And then you're going to need needles. This is just like a 30 assortment, so they're pretty cheap. Sometimes you can get these at the dollar store. You're going to need a seam ripper, because if you make a boo-boo, you need to undo it. You're going to need thread. You know, if you're sewing, you can't just use a needle. You need your thread. So make sure it matches the color. So black is pretty standard. Blue, gray, those are pretty standard. But once you get into like your funky colors, I don't know if you're doing a skirt and it's like neon orange or something or whatever, match your threads. And then you're going to need to mark your hem. So I usually go for tailor's chalk, and this is just kind of waxy. There are ones also that are kind of more chalky. Test a piece of your fabric. So whatever you cut off from your hem, you can use that to test it. And what you want to do is you want to mark it. It doesn't matter how, you just want to mark it, and then you're going to use your iron and you're going to see if it disappears. And then there's this one. This is it's just a tailor's marker, and this one's in purple, so it'll draw on purple and then it'll disappear. But that requires that you do your hem, you cut it, you mark it, and then you leave it for how many hours or days. Like I did one for my suede, but then I needed to finish it before I realized how much time had gone by. So it depends how much time you have. I think it took like almost 2 days for this to disappear, but it does disappear. So, but every fabric reacts differently. You're going to need scissors. Make sure that they're either brand new or you're using them only for fabric, because you don't want paper scissors on your fabric. That's a big no-no. So, I always bring snips with me, so why not? You can always just use scissors, you don't need snips, but if I'm sewing something, I'll use snips to cut the threads off and start another seam. And that's pretty much it for what you need. So, you just choose what you need. Most of it you can pretty much get at the dollar store. Like really, it doesn't cost a lot. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. $7 if I count like how much each of these are. And then depending on whether or not you want pinking shears are not cheap. I got mine on sale, thank God. I think they were like $13 a fabric on. They're normally like $25, $30 each or more. And the sergers, they're not cheap either. Sewing machines you can get at just really cheap. But I know when I went to I think it was St. Vincent de Paul's, they had a whole bunch of sewing machines, especially like the vintage ones where it had like the old wheels and pedals and everything. So I mean, those old super ones are obviously vintage and expensive, and they may not work as well, but there are places that you can get a really good sewing machine and you don't have to get a serger because those are more relatively new and expensive. So I'm going to show you this clip now on what the pant looks like usually before it's hemmed and how to go about pinning it. So here it is.